Welcome to the Lodge. Hello from Austin, Texas. Technically, Round Rock, Texas, Austin vicinity. Week number 1 here at the Lodge Card Club. 2 videos ago, we touched on a fun announcement. The Lodge Card Club under new ownership. Well, some new owners, part of the ownership group. Myself, Brad Owen, and Doug Polk, and Doug Polk's team. And this is the big launch week. This is the Monster Meetup Week. Madness. I added the madness in there myself into the title. Bound to be tons and tons of action here this week. I came and played last night. I played the PLO here, the 1-2-5 PLO. It plays bigger than 1-2-5. Fun game though. We had 2 tables of that. So this is actually technically my second day of playing here at the Lodge ever. And we are stepping it up in stakes considerably. Right back here is the live stream table. Firing that up immediately. The game is going to be 5-10 no limit hold'em, but I imagine that will immediately become 5-10 25. Probably 50, maybe 100, just craziness all around, I imagine. We'll see what happens here. Gonna hop into the action. We got Brad Owen on the table, we got Doug Polk on the table, we got DQ, we got the Poker Traveler, we got a bunch of other people, and it's gonna be fasten your seatbelts kind of a game, I imagine. Wish me luck. Let's get in there and play some cards. As mentioned, stakes are being raised immediately, and as you can see in this very first hand as we're getting underway here, the straddles have turned this game into a 5, 10, 25, 50 no-limit hold'em game. The 7 deuce bounty game is on, which means if you win a hand with any 7 deuce combo, everyone else at the table has to pay that person $100. Spoiler alerts, I didn't get dealt that hand a single time in this game, but my new fellow co-owners certainly did and played it to the hills. Getting underway here, we find ace-queen after it folds me in the hijack, and I decide an appropriate raise in this arrangement is $175. We could probably raise a little bigger than that, especially with DQ in this lineup, calling blind over half the time, but I'm going to at least start off on the sane side of things. 3 ways to a good flop for us hitting top pair. DQ and Scotland check it over to me, and of course we want to c-bet. I make it $225, and while you might think that's plenty to shed these 2 holdings, you'd be wrong because Scotland decides to peel here out of the second straddle spot. The bottom card pairs on the turn, and after he checks it over to me on such a wet board, I'm going to bet it again, this time for $450. Looking back at the footage here, I'm guessing one of 3 things happened. Either Scotland decided not to chase a flush draw out of position on a paired board, or the graphics were wrong, or we're in Texas and I can't explain it. I'm undecided for now, but it's good to drag a pot on hand number 1. In this next hand, I have the $50 straddle on. Cedric opens for $175 first to act, and there's a bunch of callers before we see Queen Jack offsuit. Getting a great price with 2 broadways, I toss it in. 4 ways to Queen 10-4, giving us top pair, and Scotland leads into the field from the small blind for $300. This is typically a pretty big show of strength, but I'm going nowhere with top pair while the other 2 players fold. The turn pairs the bottom card, and this time Scotland checks it. With so many draws available, my plan is to bet here and then check back on the river. My $475 bet gets called, and we head to the last card.
I have a chop here.
Not a great card for Andrew. Let's see what size he decides to go for, if any, on the river here.
Definitely going to fire.
I assume end every month is going to be pretty big here.
I like an overbet. Blast off.
Try to get him to fold the chop there.
Yeah.
Scotland the type to do that?
No.
Looks like Andrew's going for the other option. He's going to try to get a crying call out of a hand like a 10.
There's going to be big games on Saturday.
Suspiciously small size.
Scotland. I'm going to raise here for
So
a large sizing, I'd imagine here.
With your money.
Andrew in the +1 position, very unlikely that he's holding a 4. Scotland's going to feel very confident that he's got the best holding. And he's going to rip it all in. All you can eat with a soda on the side.
After he checks it to me, there's a couple of options, but I decide to target a 10 with my tiny bet. Scotland correctly reads this particular situation and decides I wouldn't do that with a 4 and rips his full stack in there for $3,700. It's kind of a ridiculous spot since I don't think he has a 4 here, mainly because I don't see him just check calling with that on the turn after leading into 3 players on the flop. I don't know anything about Scotland at this point in time, and while I'm not worried about a 4, I am worried about pocket 10s. That hand would make way more sense with this line, leading into 3 players, checking turn to allow draws to catch up, and then check jamming for value versus a worse full house like mine. I decide in the moment that I'm either calling for a chop or losing in this spot, which isn't typically all that attractive of a proposition, and I decide to let him have it. Cut me some slack here, guys. I'm still getting acclimated to the ways of Texas poker. In this hand, the $100 straddle is on, so 2, 5, 10, 25, 50, 100. Very normal. And we find another ace-queen in the hijack. I make it $300 to go. Mixon calls in the big blind. DQ calls dark as he does before Scotland puts in the squeeze up to 1,800. Folds back to me, and after seeing a ton of action on the table already, and this being an easy squeeze spot for Scotland with a variety of holdings, I'm just not in a folding mood at all. There's only one hand that ace-queen is completely dead against, and I don't think people in Texas are allowed to get that hand. So let's go.
Ace-queen, these two battling once again.
Interesting spot for Andrew here. He's going to have to put in a very large chunk of his stack to call. I think he's more likely going to either shove or fold.
Think he's more likely to call or just shove or fold? All in. Yeah, I thought the shove.
He does
would
put it in.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's a fold or shove for the most part.
Agreed.
We call that a hood flat when you call with that little amount behind.
Scotland will not be folding after putting in 1,800. Mixon will be folding. He's not coming along with all this action. Saving a little bit of face, the Pitmaster General.
So it appears we're going to have a classic race here for about, give or take 8K.
Got a feeling the ace or the queen's coming.
I'll take the jacks for...
A sandwich?
You want to bet a sandwich?
Should I fix you some sandwiches?
That's what we do here, sandwich bets. Keep it friendly.
Book.
Pound. I'll take the ace queen. Let's go, Andrew, one time. Sorry, Scotland, you're my boy, but oh god, running it quickly here, and I'm dead. Sandwich for you, Mike.
Just like that.
Just like that is right. Maybe 1.5 orbits into this game, despite winning hand number 1, I'm now in the hole for $5,000. In the very next hand off the deck, action folds over to me, and we look down at a premium 2 red queens. It's a good spot to pick up a hand like this immediately after getting stacked because you won't get a lot of respect, and that's what I'm hoping for when I make it $175 to go.
They barely had one table a night, just him and his parents sitting, trying to make people come in, and we got ladies against 7 deuce again.
Ooh, this is a good spot for Neeme, I gotta say.
The only hand that Doug can potentially win with tonight, but in bad shape here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens here when it gets back to Andrew. More than likely, he's going to put in a re-raise, and then it's going to be really interesting to see what Doug decides to do. Does he get sticky?
Andrew just got felted too, so on bullet number 2, does he really want to build a pot here, back-to-back hands? I mean, queen's a premium.
DQ going to put in a little bit of money that he is very unlikely to get back. Wow, and Tony's waking up with jacks.
Tony not folding will at least put his hard hat on and go set mine here. What will Andrew do when the action gets around to him?
Looks like Tony's counting out a raise. He does make it, looks like around, oh, he's all in.
Now Andrew disgusted.
This would be pretty nasty if Andrew gets sort of accidentally bluffed here.
That's Mike Brady in the commentary, and he's quickly become one of my favorite commentators anywhere, and he's right that this is typically not the most comfortable spot, with the pocket queens facing a cold 4-bet jam with the 3-better still behind me. But there is zero chance that I'm folding these queens.
So you guys play here every week?
Boys enjoying themselves tonight. An all-star lineup from the Lodge. You guys deserved it. All our subscribers.
Oh, well, now you can't lose.
25. Oh, my bad. I just gave him the good juju. 48.70. 45.
We also had a $99 super chat there that want to try and find and scroll up.
You guys got a generous audience here, don't you?
Always a loyal fan base here, Mike.
Mike, you wouldn't believe how generous folks are with us. We love them.
Andrew does stick it in with the queens. Doug wisely gets out of the way with 7 deuce. Isn't going to try to win that extra 1,000 or 900.
From Andrew. Put in a tough spot. It always hurts a little bit after you've been felt to wake up with the premium and then you're put to the test. But Andrew, with the correct read, makes the call. Way in the lead here. Brad's got a cup on the felt here, a little bit dangerous. Not something we usually love on this string table, but we'll allow it.
Hey,
He's earned his due.
he's an owner.
He'll just pay for a new one if he breaks the table. Big Tony up against it here.
I want you guys all to winner break even.
DQ's still in there with the King 5 suited. He's thinking about maybe taking a crack at this. He'd actually be in somewhat decent shape with one overcard and a suited hand.
DQ goes deep in the tank here. He's genuinely thinking about taking a crack at it with a suited king and putting the hurt on 2 players, but eventually he lets it go. And we see we're in great shape to double up here and get back to even.
Did he fold? Did DQ officially fold? Is he just kind of showing? Okay. He did fold.
Little FaceTime for DQ. He's earned it.
So we got the red queens versus the red jacks.
No sandwich bet here.
Looks like they're maybe going to run it twice.
Usually what we do when each player has a pair, on the flop we'll bet a sandwich, so if you hit your set, you win a sandwich. You don't have to win the hand. But if there's no sets, then it's just a push.
King 5 would have made 2 pair.
Gross.
Let's see if Neeme can hold on board number 2 here.
I believe he will. No, Jack in the window. Jack's full.
Need an ace or a queen for Andrew. No luck. They're going to chop it up. A little bit of dead money there. So both players are going to make a little bit.
Sorry for playing like a nit.
Wow.
The Texas variance is real, and it looks like it's not going to be that easy finding a way back to even. You'll be shocked by the fact that there's nobody all in these next few hands, but that is what happens. Here I call an additional 50 to complete the $100 straddle, and we see a 4-way flop of 7-3-3 rainbow. I lead into the field for 225 and take this one down for a small uptick. In this next hand, I make it 300 go from the hijack with ace king and get 3 callers. We don't see any improvement on 4-6-6 with 2 hearts, and I'm not looking to start barreling versus this many lunatics in one hand, so I give it up on the turn when Mixon leads into the field. With the rare no straddle on in this hand, I make it 100 to go with a suited ace and flop terrible versus a small gathering of pre-flop callers. We let this one go 2. In this hand, Tony limps in early position, and I want to try and isolate in position, so I raise it up to 200 here with the king 10. That's usually a pretty futile plan around these parts, with even Doug getting into the mix here, followed by DQ and Tony making the call.
A little bit of action here. Tony limps under the gun with the 3s. Andrew raises with the king 10. Doug calls on the button. And then everyone else that you can see there on your screen calls. The toppest of pairs for Neeme. Middle pair and a gutter for Doug.
Backdoor diamonds. Pair of 3s for Tony. DQ with the worst of it. Checks his option. All the way around back to Andrew. Top pair. Going for some value here on the flop.
Top pair on a super wet board versus 3 players. I don't know how effective a c-bet is going to be in this spot, but I don't think check calling can be all that great either. I decided to take the more aggressive route and bet half pot. Doug makes the call, and the others fold, leaving us heads up to the turn.
Makes a quick call, and they're going to go heads up. Ooh, and a good card for Doug. He's going to make a straight. Expect to see Andrew slow down here.
Definitely going to slow down here now, since this is one of many bad turn cards for us. I check it over to Doug, who thinks for a bit, and then wagers $700. We do have a draw to a higher straight, but it's a bit on the optimistic side, so tossing this one into the muck feels like the right thing to do. The tank top fund grows a little bit in this hand. Here we see the winnings list, which for the majority of us, it's actually the losings list, as I'm sitting right around that 5K mark at this point, looking for the cards to start cooperating a bit more, and we find just the hand to do it with. I make it 100 to go with pocket kings, and we get some good news after action folds over to Mixon. He wants to play for more and makes it $425 to go out of the cutoff. Music to my ears, and when it folds back over to me, we can either slow play or we can put in a 4-bet. Very much in the mood to build this pot further, so again, I decide on the more aggressive action.
Sizing from him.
So a little under, decent amount under 3x, about a 2.67x 4-bet.
Imagine Mixon will just flat here in position, and we're going to go to a flop. Although Andrew hasn't put in many 4-bets tonight at all, so Mixon trying to figure out, am I up against 10s plus? And the answer is yes here.
This would be a very impressive fold.
At best case scenario, we're flipping here, but you could put that hard hat on and go set mining for a chance to win a monster pot.
It's generally a good play to 3-bet the 9s in this situation, but you really don't want to see a 4-bet. That's kind of the thing that you're going to fear in the back of your mind as you put in that 3-bet.
Anthony with the $9.99 super chat. Thank you, tournament director.
Thank you, Anthony Chester. Good on you. Hope you were enjoying your day off. I know you're going to have a busy week, sir, so thank you for all that you do here at the Lodge.
Yeah, he's going to have a busy week.
Mixon makes the call, so to a flop we go. 2.2 in the middle.
Could get interesting here. Andrew's got about 1.5 times the pot behind. No, that's not a board that's going to be too interesting. But you never know. I've been surprised on this stream many a time already. And I've just been here for a day.
Now, have you watched our stream before you got here?
Yeah.
Anytime?
Yeah, once we partnered with you guys, I've probably consumed about 5-6 hours of the stream now.
Nice.
Definitely tossed it
Imagine
on.
Andrew's going to go for about 1/3 pot here, maybe about 800-900 downsize here. Board not that wet, perhaps fearful of jacks or queens. That might have been treading lightly pre-flop.
Yeah, I think the standard thing to do in Neeme's spot here is to kind of go for a pretty small bet and set up a shove on the turn, more than likely. You could also play a strategy where you bet small on the flop and also bet small on the turn.
The flop is maybe a little bit worrisome since we lose to all the other big pairs now. But as far as my decision process goes, it's going to be mostly straightforward. In a 4-bet pot, I'm looking to play for stacks with an overpair, and the best way to do that is to start betting.
Neeme has 3,100 behind, so it's kind of just perfect sizing to set up that turn shove. Now it's up to Mixes whether or not he wants to peel versus this small bet. Doesn't have very good playability with 9s. Has 2 outs to improve.
I got to correct you a little bit, Mr. Brady.
What'd I say?
His name is Mixon.
Mixon.
Mixon, so he'd be a little...
His name is Mixon.
Mixon.
Gotcha. I was just reading Mixes like his graphic.
His name
Gotcha.
is Cameron, last name Mixon, but he likes to be called Mixing It Up.
Got it.
But your analysis was spot on.
Oh, good to know.
Let's see what he does.
I would not want to get his name wrong. Sorry about that, Mixon, if you're seeing this later.
Oh, he forgives you already. He's in trouble here going to the turn. Gonna need some serious assistance.
10 would be a very interesting card here. We don't
Now
get
he's
it, though.
just looking for 1 out, the 9 of spades.
Imagine the all-in, all-you-can-eat now with the hearts out there. Perhaps going to target a queen or maybe a jack. I think Andrew's just going to rip it here.
It is interesting if Andrew decides to go something like 800. It really puts a lot of hands that Mixon can have in a tough spot, but he's not going to do that. He's going to put it all in.
With a little less than a pot-sized bet remaining in my stack, it's time to stick it in there and pray that we don't immediately get snap called. And then if we're able to fade that, then start hoping for a call.
Now Mixon, you know, if he thinks Andrew has ace-king, a lot of people like to put people on ace-king.
Mixon pretty sticky, but again, Andrew, not the one to really be going blast off here with air.
Yeah, he's been pretty snug tonight.
Pretty snug. You got to, you know, give that some thought and respect that.
He's been playing a lot of PLO too. Maybe he's not used to these 2-card.
He knows what he's doing, right?
Well, he knows what he's doing, but maybe I'm just suggesting maybe he's a little rusty because he's just been so focused on those 4-card games.
First time under the lights here at the Lodge. Doesn't want to be embarrassed here.
Looking very calm there with his drink.
He kind of put himself in an awkward spot because he was holding that drink that way as he put in the 4-bet preflop, and you're kind of stuck now. You can't, you don't want to give off a read and put the drink down at some point, and then, you know, before you know it, you're on the turn shoving $3,100, and you've got a plastic cup stuck in your hand.
Live tells, it's a thing.
New course, upswing, playing the cup on the arm.
The cup on the shoulder.
Is that going to be new standard now? Instead of, you know, the hand on the shoulder or the hand on the side there, it's with the cup. You might be seeing that in your local poker room. Oh no.
This, to me, this looks like a Mixon. Could be wrong, but it looks like a Mixon counting how much he's up right now and kind of factoring that in a little bit because he's.
Mixon's pretty sticky.
Very sticky.
But he had piles. He makes the call.
My goodness.
Really only beating ace-king.
9 of spades.
This is 1 out.
One of the few mistakes that Mixon has made tonight. This one's going to be costly, a 10K pot. Going Andrew's way, unless A 9
5 of
kills
diamonds on the river.
Goodness, Andrew Neeme doubles up.
It's easy to question Mixon's decision here, and even he might want that one back. But it's not only ace-king he can assign me, we also have the 7-deuce game running, and it's been getting shown down a lot on this table. So there are some extra combos of hands that he can beat aside from the usual suspects. But either way, we finally get a great spot and claw some of the lost chips back into our stack. A couple of hands that don't work out for us. First, we find an 8-7 suited and don't find any connection on the flop. Immediately after that, we take a king-jack offsuit into battle, but that also comes up empty. This game is playing so big that if you string a few of these hands together, you just bleed away several $100s at a time, and it can really add up. In this hand, the $100 straddle is on, and DQ limps in behind, as he does. We find pocket 9s in the big blind, which is fairly premium in this game, and I bump it up to $600. Brad calls in the straddle, and DQ gets out of the way with his weak ace.
Thank you, Jack, for that comment. We love the positive comments here in the chat.
That's all I wanted. I just wanted the eye roll.
Battle of the vloggers here. Brad versus Andrew. Queen 4-3 flop. Pretty interesting one. Brad's got a little something with that backdoor flush draw and an overcard. Some backdoor straight opportunities.
Shows up and just stacks me.
It's tough to flop an overpair with the 9s, but the next best thing is only one overcard on the flop. And my hand definitely benefits from some protection, so I'm going to continue here.
15? I don't know. He's going to pour his backpack on the table?
Yeah. Anywhere from 5.
He's going to do just that.
That's, yeah.
Let's take a turn.
25?
Spikes a king. It's a card I'd expect Andrew to slow down on quite a bit with 9s. Not really much to be gained by betting here. Then again, when you do check, you're going to be in a pretty tough spot versus a bet. But I think you just got to check and kind of go from there.
Now with 2 overcards and the fact that my hand is tough to improve with, I think checking makes sense. It's not completely unreasonable to blast away and turn this hand into a bluff, but I think we can maybe do that with some smaller pairs that have less showdown value. I decide to check it and hope to get to showdown with my hand.
I know, right? I was like,
All right, chat, hurry. How much do you think Brad's going to bet here? 2,300 in the pot. He's got top pair. What do you think he's going to check? What would you bet? Drop your bet size in the chat.
Half pot.
A little 1150 ball, roughly.
Facing a bet on the river, I think it might be too optimistic to try and call here. We could beat some busted draws, but we lose to other hands, and I don't know how often he turns smaller pairs into bluffs in this spot. So I decide to let my buddy Brad win some money in this hand. We're joined by even more YouTube poker star power as Ethan, aka Rampage Poker, has arrived to the table. He opens this hand to 300 over the $100 straddle. I have ace-10 in position and make the call, and DQ finds a very gapped but suited hand and calls as well. 3 ways to a flop that doesn't help, and I check it back. The turn is interesting as it gives us a double gutter. Ethan bets this time for 700. Kind of a big bet, but with lots of holdings that can continue on this board, it makes sense. I could probably do anything in this spot, and looking back at it, I kind of like a raise, but maybe if I had a straight draw on the flop, I would have taken a stab, so I don't know if the story is completely believable. I continue with a flat call, and DQ gets out of the way before we see a total brick on the river. Ethan makes our decision easy here by firing a bet, and I let it go. All the YouTubers find their victory versus me. Doug gets a victory, Brad gets a victory, Rampage gets a victory. Dwindling back down here again after a few hands don't go our way. We find a playable one looking at a suited ace in the +2 spot and make it 175 to go over the $50 straddle. 2 callers this time heading into the Queen 6 flop. Not great, but not terrible, giving us 2 overs to the 6 and 2 backdoors. Checks to me, and I think a C bet makes sense. I wager $175, and the other 2 players pretty quickly get out of the way, and every bet helps when you're residing in the city of Stuckland, Texas. The straddles appear to be all the way up to $200 in this hand of our friendly little game of poker. Action folds over to me and we find the 7s in the small blind this time. Gonna raise it, and with all that money sitting out there, I make the casual $700 pre-flop raise. Action folds over to the $200 man, who of course isn't going anywhere with a hand that pretty, and we go heads up to a flop. Once again, 1 overcard to our pair, and with similar thinking as before, I'm going to bet it.
You can't always do it. It's a nice balance. Like,
It was the one time.
Yeah.
It's like, I just thought of it like in the moment. I was like, oh, this will be funny.
you gotta be careful with people getting the sweat. Like, they need to make sure they understand like the responsibilities that come with that. There's a lot of responsibility.
You have no opinion.
Neeme bets with the 7s, gets called by DQ with ace high. Good card for DQ, gives him an open ender. Neeme's actually got a double gutter of his own.
But then what if you had to take a pee or something?
My goodness.
We just had a little ruckus walk by the booth, if you heard a little weirdness.
My goodness.
DQ can peel super wide, and my hand has removal to the strongest hands on this board, so I decided to keep my foot on the gas and not give any free cards.
This place is crazy.
Neeme goes 850 here, kind of a small size.
I believe you. I believe you.
That is the IRL meme of
Ooh, and a quick raise from DQ, 2550.
Super interesting spot now with our pocket 7s versus this opponent. A couple of options on the table, but I don't think folding is one of them. As mentioned, we have a double gutter that can improve if we're behind, although being up against 7-8 would be a disaster. Versus all other hands, we have okay equity. And the more I think about it, the less likely it seems that DQ has a straight in this spot, since we have 2 of the 7s. He's also the type of player who will look to inflict max pain. I mean, it's literally written on his shirt. The board is connected in a way that should favor the pre-flop caller much more so than the pre-flop aggressor, and if he's thinking along those lines, he's right. If I have a hand like pocket aces or kings here, it's a really miserable spot, but I think having 7s here gives me an additional option. If DQ has a hand like 6-4 or 5-4 or any other pair plus straight draw combo, he gets to realize all that equity when I flat call. If I don't flat call, I turn the tables and put him in the tough spot that he's trying to put me in. I look a little foolish if I re-raise versus a straight, but I double block those hands. And if he happens to have 2 pair here, then at least I have a bunch of cards that can sometimes bail me out. I'm not sure I'd rip it in here with aces, since we don't block the strongest hands with that holding. I'd probably lean towards flat calling with that hand, but pocket 7s presents an interesting additional option.
7's not going to be punked.
That's an awesome play, and this is so brutal now for DQ because he has this strong draw, but he's now has 2 options. He's either has to call with, you know, just ace high and a kind of crappy open ender, or he has to fold that open ender, which, you know, if the river's a 2 or a 7, he knows he probably has the best hand. An ace in this case also would give him the best hand. This is kind of the downside to raising a hand like this. You get re-raised, now you're sort of in the cage. You really stuck between rock and a hard place. Both options for DQ suck here. I mean, 17% of this pot belongs to him. That's how equity works, and he's going to either have to fold away that 17%, or he's going to have to call. And he's not getting the right price to do that, so it's really a lose-lose situation.
DQ doesn't like to fold. Whenever there's a chance, a hope, a dream.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly got a chance.
Big pot energy. Let's hope he puts the money over the line. Maybe he gets lucky, maybe he doesn't. But the chat wins.
A lot of dead outs for DQ.
DQ only runs it once, max pain. So if he makes this call, he's going to need a deuce or a 7. Or an ace.
Ace will do it.
Carving out calling chips.
You're so far ahead, it's not even fun to use. You know, I just have a 4.
You got a 4?
That's it. I was making a move, but since I've already put so much money in there, I was just making a move that a 2 or a 7 would come up.
Here we go. Let's see it, folks.
Oh.
Andrew with the blockers.
There's good news and bad news on this river card. The bad news is that at the culmination of this very fun hand, the live stream froze and the thousands of people who were watching didn't get to see the river card. The good news is that the river card was the King of Hearts, missing DQ's straight draw and giving us the full double up.
Andrew's all in than I am with DQ's raise.
I agree. Yeah, that was super savvy play from Andrew. I mean, if he just calls, DQ's play isn't too bad, right? I mean, he gets to maybe bluff. He gets to...
Folks, if you guys are lagging in the chat, just refresh real quick. Just refresh the channel, have some patience, and we'll come back on up. I know some people were lagging there. Sorry to interrupt you guys, but
yeah, no problem.
Lost a couple viewers there on the lag.
Yeah, so if Andrew just calls, DQ gets to see that river without having to put in an extra $3,000. Which isn't so bad, but he correctly read the situation and put DQ in a tough spot.
We pick up a couple of small pots at the end of this session, both of which happen to be against Rampage. In the first one, I open the Queen 10 offsuit and Ethan defends. We c-bet an ace-high board and take it down. In the second one, it's the same pre-flop scenario, but I play a little bit of pot control on the flop after hitting top pair. A delayed c-bet on the turn, however, wins us the pot. Session of insanity as predicted. Things were looking pretty bleak in the early going, got stacked pretty early on, and was not all that hopeful, to be honest with you. But maybe that's not the wisest frame of mind, because in these kinds of games here in Texas, and at this venue especially, anything can happen when playing for these stakes, and so many straddles on, and people who like to get in the mix and fire and gamble and have some fun at the poker table. Anything is possible. So we were definitely stuck in the early going, as we could see, but later on managed to somehow find a win in this 5, 10, 25, 50, 100, sometimes 200, sometimes 400. Just insane game on day one here of the Monster Meetup Week at the Lodge. Ended up getting into the game for $12,000 and cashed out for $14,090, I believe. So a profit of $2,090 after being shellacked in the early going. I'm gonna go get some sleep. I'm exhausted. Tomorrow we have a massive meetup game planned. It's just playing 2-5, but 2-5 is, of course, those numbers are meaningless here in Texas. And then later on in the week, pot limit Omaha, and then more shenanigans across the board. I'm gonna go to bed. So signing out from the Lodge, day one of many. Just tons more madness to come from this location for sure.